the world's #1 podcasting platform for African stories.
I guess while we wait, since it's not totally quiet, I can kind of fill everyone in who's waiting for the spaces to start. A little bit of an overview of what was going on today for International Podcast Day here on the continent and globally. So, my name is Molly. I am the CEO of Afripods. I am based in Nairobi, like the rest of our incredible team who has been putting together this very full 10-hour long day of programming. It is currently 7 o'clock here. And this conversation is going to be on the business of podcasting. So we have some incredible speakers lined up. It's kind of giving you a behind the scenes view into like the production, the marketing, the strategy, the operations of what it takes to run a business in podcasting. So we're just giving a couple more minutes. I see Doris just joined. She's one of our speakers. And we have one last woman joining. So let's give it one more minute and we'll start. And whoever jumps in, jumps in. That said, as we wait, a couple of the other panels and conversations we had were about community, were about growth in podcasting, monetization, many topics that people find interesting, at least who we've spoken to on the ground here. So hopefully, if you've participated in any other pieces of our day, you found value in it and you've enjoyed it, and we'd love to hear your feedback. You're welcome to send messages to us at Afripods across all social media, and I'm sure our community manager Gathoni would love that feedback. So just one more minute. We're waiting on Camilla to join, or KG rather. But let the speakers, if you guys want to start just saying hi and unmute yourself. I think we can start with really general introductions. So why don't we go Adell and Doris, and I'll round us up, and hopefully KG will have joined us. Adell?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Adell Coleman. I'm Chief Operations Officer with DCP Entertainment. We focus on multimedia, but right now we are focusing primarily in the podcasting space, distribution, production housework, marketing, and growth. And we have a few shows on our own slate that we created. I also co-host and executive produce our show Say Their Name, which talks to families who have been negatively impacted by police violence. Our whole mission at DCP is to give a voice to those underrepresented communities and serve as a platform to create another space for folks that look like us. Thanks for having me.
And Adell, where are you based? Just because we have a bit of a global, we're having
Yeah,
global
so
conversations, so I don't want anyone who's here to not know where you are.
yeah, so we're a little bit everywhere, but our primary base is in New York City. We have Podstream Studios there, which we just opened, and I personally am based in the Maryland area. So we're a little bit spread out all over.
Amazing. And Doris, you need no introduction in Kenya, but for those who may not be in Kenya, can you give us a little bit of an overview as to who you are?
Hi, everybody. I hope I'm clear enough for everyone. My name is Doris Onyango. I work for SemaBOX. I'm production manager at SemaBOX. SemaBOX is a specialist podcasting studio that is based here in Nairobi. We offer the technical skills to podcasters. Basically, we offer a plug and play service to podcasters, and we assist newbie podcasters all the way to people who have been experienced to create their podcast. I am also project lead at the Dada Podcast Incubator, which is the world's first incubator for women and non-binary individuals. So the Dada Podcast Incubator wants to platform voices of women and non-binary individuals in the global south. So yeah, that's a little bit of who I am and what we do at SemaBOX.
So, guys, we are really in luck to have an intimate conversation with both Adell and Doris, and hopefully I can contribute to the call as well. So, for those who just joined, my name is Molly. I am the CEO of Afripods. We are a free Pan-African podcast hosting platform based in Nairobi, Kenya, focused on creating the opportunity for Africans to take up as much space as possible while getting paid for their content. Our incredible team, specifically our community manager, has put together this full 10-hour day of podcasting content focused on Black people on the continent as well as in the diaspora. And I'm hoping to take this conversation a little bit differently than some of our other conversations earlier today and make it a little bit more informal and a real conversation. So I do have a couple of questions for both of you guys. And for those who are listening in, this is very much intended to be one of those conversations that gets under the hood and a little behind the scenes of what it's like in the business of podcasting and what these incredible women do. So I think I'll start off with a general question, and both of you guys feel free to answer. It's going to frame a little bit of how we think about the business. So the first thing is, what role does the media play in influencing the adaptation to podcasting and shedding a light on its impact? What have you guys seen in your markets with media and how it impacts podcasting and the pickup rate of it? Adell, do you want, or Doris, I see you unmuted yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think in our context, we have kind of forced traditional media's hand, right? Because we have been able to create stories that legacy or traditional media would not be able to tell. And those are the stories that, anyway, in my opinion, that I see people are gravitating towards. So traditional media will definitely want to have a quick soundbite, a quick highlight to put on the 9 o'clock news. But with a podcast, you will be able to go more in depth on a topic. So we are seeing that people are moving towards those kind of stories, and they're not moving towards the big stories of grand corruption or misinformation or mega deals that are going wrong. They want to hear more nuanced stories that are closer to them about sex workers, about human rights, just more closer to home stories. And now traditional media has realized that people are gravitating towards those kind of stories. And you can see that traditional media is now jumping on the wagon and joining the podcasting industries. For example, here in Nairobi, one of the biggest media houses, Nation Media Group, now has podcasts. So I think podcasts have done the reverse. We have kind of forced the hand of traditional media to go the way of podcasting.
Oh, Doris, I don't even know if we're going to get to any of the other questions because clearly you're opening up a can of worms. But Adell, do you have anything to add to that? I'm sure you do from a different lens and especially in a different market. But how do you see media influencing podcasting where you are in New York and Maryland?
Yeah, no, I agree with Doris actually, because there is a level of transparency that you get in podcasting that you don't get in legacy media or traditional media. And I do feel like podcast creators are and have set the tone. To me, it's a little bit of a back and forth. If we're talking about TV, radio, etc. Like I started off in traditional radio. I used to work at Sirius XM, and I remember we started hearing about podcasting. I'm like, podcast is coming. You're like, oh, we're not worried. And now you see those same entities, partnering with podcast distribution platforms. I feel like traditional media, in a way, has been often trying to play catch up. I feel like the biggest influence, has been pop culture, where you see a lot of these now celebrities are trying to run and create their own shows and create networks and partnering with these big distribution networks as well. I think legacy media in general, like I said, is trying to play and follow those creators, and creators are setting the tone, because I feel like you now see the establishment of companion podcasts where there's a TV show and now they want to create a podcast directly related to that. We've seen that with Issa Rae's company with her show Insecure and her newest show. We've also seen that in true crime docs. We've seen, although there is a space already that we see even like with the podcast distribution like Tenderfoot, where they do a lot of true crime, we now see directly on like A&E and other major networks are now creating companion podcasts where they're creating podcasts directly related to the shows that they're distributing. Even like ESPN, all their shows now have podcasts. So I feel like the creatives do set the tone and kind of put out there like, okay, we're creating this content. We have a transparency. Here's a visibility, in a way that we did not have from legacy media. And the way that I feel like a lot of big media and traditional media is playing catch up is definitely pushing out those companion shows that we're seeing a huge growth in general lately.
Amazing. I love, and also I meant to say, for those who are listening, if you guys have questions, feel free to tweet at us and we'll make sure to get those answered as well. I think I want to add to this, keeping in the informal conversation. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, and Afripods is a platform here. So I actually received a phone call from BBC, from their business development office, and they are having a conference on digital transformation with about 20 C-suite executives in Cape Town in a couple of weeks. And they invited me to speak on it. And I think it's important to say that as we're talking about the business of podcasting, is that digital transformation is happening. If you're not thinking about how to digitize your verticals, if you're not exploring new media, if you're not looking for different ways to meet your consumers where they are or testing it, you are behind the eight ball. Just echoing what Doris and Adell are saying in terms of the creators are setting the tone, what people want to talk about, these niche topics. We've never been in more of a individualized society, especially with Gen Z, who wants exactly what they want when they want it. Podcasts are a very intimate way to connect with a consumer in a specific area, and I'm really excited about that. So I'm not sure if Adell or Doris have anything to add in what I said, because we're going to get into the money. But do you guys have any additional things to talk about, just generally media in podcasting, or should I jump into the money? What do you guys think?
Well, I was just going to say really quickly, to even what you just said about kind of staying and playing, staying with what's happening and, being self-aware. Like we've even seen that with podcasting in general too, where it was just like audio, straight to mic or whatever. Now we're seeing, like you said, the visual representation. We're seeing verticals. We're seeing more social media strategy. We're seeing like as media evolves and we see short form, long form, we're playing all of this. And those are now becoming ways that are growing, not just media or not just growing your podcast or ways to grow your podcast, but like you said, can monetize. We're seeing big business kind of come into that space. Now YouTube is doing YouTube shorts, which a lot of people are now using for podcasts to promote their stuff. It's not just as simple as creating an audiogram, putting a voice note on it and sending it out to the masses. Now we're kind of seeing a blend from the visual representation where it's like you have full on sets now for podcasts where you're now having like, it's kind of like taking the place of TV shows or quick shorts or stuff like that. So that does also play into a lot of what you were saying as well.
Amazing. All right. So thank you, Adell. And I think I want to keep this conversation to 45 minutes because sometimes an hour feels like it drags, but I want to get into money. So question for both of you. Is there money to be made in podcasting outside of the creator journey? How do those who are not creative participate and cash in on their talents? Do either of you have opinions on that? Doris, I think I'm going to lean with you first because you actually brought the creator value last year. So you can talk about how you bring the creator money as well as the business money, but I'd be very curious from a production company perspective what you think about that.
Yes, yes, and yes, there is money to be made when it comes to podcasting outside of the creator. Okay, so now let me, because I work with creators predominantly, let me say that advertisers are moving towards putting money behind podcasts. Corporates are behind putting money towards creating their own podcast so that you can see people are invested in creating a good podcast that tells a good story about their organization or the cause that they're championing. And sometimes you'll see that organizations will tend toward, let's pay this creator to, even if we're white labeling an issue, we can pay the creator to bring out what we want as an organization, right? But on the flip side, there's the people who are behind the podcast. There's the producers, there's the sound engineers, there's the studio designers. What I have seen currently is, whereas in traditional media, you have one producer working on one project and then that's it. Right now, we can have we've kind of supercharged the gig economy, because being a producer used to be you are with a media house, right? Now you are able to have all these other people, engineers, people who do soundscaping, editors, researchers, working on several different projects. So that's where I'm seeing the money going, right now.
Okay, amazing. And thank you for that. Adell, do you have any feelings or an opinion on what money is there to be made in podcasting, not just for the creators, but also for businesses?
Yeah, I think it's important to really understand as a podcaster what your brand is. I feel like once you have a good understanding of what your brand is, then you can figure out ways to monetize and grow. I definitely agree 100% with it now being like a more gig based, producers serve multiple roles and all of that. But even just based directly in podcast production and distribution, yourself, there's money to be made. And it just kind of depends on how far how much you support your own brand. Like you're aware of yourself, your core audience, your brand, so you can find ways to monetize. I've seen people with podcasts or startups that have such a niche thing that they work with small businesses or small Black businesses, like, hey, can I promote your product here, for those production costs or distribution or ads within my podcast? Okay, now there's money to be made from small businesses. There's an exchange there. Also, a lot of different organizations, as podcasting is growing more and more, they're looking for people with those niche conversations. If you have something, let's say, first thing that comes to my mind is like, hey, my podcast is about Black hair. That is a multi-million-dollar industry, period. So maybe trying to not, create decks and stuff for yourself once you have enough content to submit to a lot of these different entities and companies, and seeing if they do have anything that they're trying to collab with or sponsorship or put ads within your content. Not being afraid to have those larger conversations, especially as people of color, because, a lot of companies, I say this way, but a lot of companies are looking or, feel like they have to fill that gap of having a voice that comes from Black and brown people. So how can we take the space that they need and try to monetize it on our own by doing those shows that may just be completely sponsored by a larger platform or something like that? Like, you can now create podcasts based on a business design. And I feel like that's where a lot of money, and that's where podcasting is headed even more so. I feel like even beyond companion podcasts, if it's like, going back to my hair example, like, I don't know, we'll say Mayel is doing like, hey, we're looking to grow. Okay, here's a podcast that's around hair. And you could be our main sponsor, meaning we just plug you at the beginning and the mid roll and at the end. You know, that's a brand partnership. And I feel like as people of color, we need to look more into that. And then also collabing with each other. I feel like that's what helps us to grow numbers. That's what helps us to grow impressions. That's what helps us to understand where our audiences are. And I feel like the better you understand your audience, the better you're able to monetize your podcast.
Amazing. Thank you, Adele. And something that I thought of as you were speaking, Doris, you guys are the largest producer of podcasts in Kenya. And I've spoken to you before about some of the niche podcasts you have, how when you're working with these creators to identify the focus of what they're doing, whether it's someone like Anything and Everything, where they're focused on like these young collegiate aged women, do you see that the focus of what these podcasters are doing helps them when it comes to earning money and monetizing their content?
Of course, it does. And that's a great example that you've used. I normally tell my podcasters that instead, the biggest thing that people want to do right now is go to the big corporates and say, I want the big corporates to um, sponsor my podcast or put advertising behind my podcast. But there are people who have smaller budgets and they're willing to put in Kenyan context like 5,000 or 10,000 shillings as a plug in the business. So you can actually, I tell them, please go to the small businesses, talk to the smaller businesses, ask them if they're willing to spend a little bit of money on advertising, and they can do that. And you have sort of a good value exchange. And that's a very important thing that I try to tell my podcasters. Your topic is niche. You may not get the big numbers, you may not get the thousands of downloads, but with the kind of engagement that you have created with your community already, you can create an impact. And someone who wants to put money behind your podcast will be able to see some sort of value.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Thank you, Doris. And I think just to note, we have spent a lot of the day talking about creators, and creators are incredibly important. I'm sure many of the people listening now are creators. However, for those who are representing businesses and are curious about how their business can get into podcasting, I'd like to ask you, Adell, as you're the COO, and I know you were previously the Chief Content Officer of DCP, how would somebody get into podcasts in their business? Can you put it in super layman terms? Explain it like I'm 5 years old. Let's say I don't know, any industry, and I'm looking, a media industry, let's say a media company who's looking to become more agile. How do I get into podcasts? I have no idea what's going on. I don't know if there's an appetite for it. What would I do? What would be step one?
Understand the space, listen to podcasts. I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of people think it's just opening a mic and talking, and there's a lot more to it than that. You know, follow podcasts, follow trends, see what's going on, subscribe to newsletters. There are so many newsletters that are out that kind of gives a lot of good insight, overall about like where the industry is, where things are headed, where the voices are, and just even if you don't necessarily always agree, you just kind of can see what's out there, just kind of being aware. I feel like sometimes as podcasters, we can put ourselves in a bubble where we're not necessarily reaching out, overall. And I feel like it's important, to be able to go and meet other folk within the space to get a better understanding. I feel like I've learned the most I've ever learned about podcasting by talking to other podcasters, by talking to people who've been out here and who've been working in the space and who've, created their companies and stuff like that. So not being afraid of communicating. I always used to say when I was at Sirius, like the hardest thing in communication sometimes is communicating with each other. We find ourselves that we're not as talking as much and listening to sessions like this and just learning and taking bits and pieces of it and, not being afraid to reach out and talk to people. But to your initial question, overall with like, starting, definitely I would say doing the research, learning about it, overall, and then, starting small, starting with people that you can trust. With DCP, it was just, me and Chris from our radio background. And we had to learn really quickly that although there are some similarities, this is not radio. It's different. And I feel like it's more community based, honestly, which I can appreciate a lot more than working in a big corporation formally. And then, getting staff, understanding the softwares that are out there, getting good gear, good equipment matters a lot. And then just kind of starting to build those relationships, finding your subjects, what you want to talk about, having a plan. One of the things that we focus on when we're distributing our podcast is we have a rollout plan. We give ourselves dates of what we want to hit by certain dates. If this is a podcast that we can do a lot of pre-recording for before we release, okay, so we set dates for recording, we set dates for distribution, we set dates for posting on social media, just really kind of mapping things out. And I find that something like that helps us to prevent burnout because I feel like a lot of people kind of just run out of things to talk about or feel exhausted from it. And so for us, just creating a strategy and talking with a host or ourselves or really doing research and understanding the subjects of what we're going to talk about and really breaking it down piece by piece and understanding of what it takes to kind of roll this out and doing a roadmap that helps us a lot with how we are able to kind of put out and create our content. And then, like I said, talking to other podcasters, seeing if we can do some type of promotional swap with them and how we can exchange our promos with theirs and try to help grow each other's audiences. That's a key part to it as well. So I would say definitely talking to each other a lot. I hope
Thank
I
you for
answered your question. I feel like I was rambling.
no,
I'm
you
sorry.
did. You did. And the thing is, I think that we focus a lot on the creator who's incredibly important in this ecosystem. But at the same time, when we're talking about the business of podcasting, there are people who just don't have a clue and they want to get into it. And I think we need to be able to also take this space to show them. So thank you for giving us all of these different examples. Doris, I have the same question for you. And the challenge I'd like to bring to you is that Africa has a lot less research than the United States or Europe or Australia when it comes
Mhm.
to the impact of podcasting. Do you
Yeah.
see as a challenge when people and businesses specifically, whether they're advertisers or not, are looking to get in the space? How do you talk to them about that?
Okay, so probably I can start with saying that for corporates, podcasting is an entirely new space, so they don't really understand it. So we have to take them slowly. We have to hold their hands. We have to kind of coax them into the space that is
Well,
podcasting. Yes, pole, exactly. So they don't know. They're very apprehensive. They are afraid of losing money. They're afraid of looking stupid. So you have to really work with them to be able to create a product that tells their story well. So we first have to start there, especially when it comes to working with corporates. Now, when it comes to research, it's a difficult thing because for us very much podcasting is still very much new media, so people don't know the impact. We don't know why we need podcasting in the first place. Is it important? Is it just the new fad that is out there? But there are people who are actually putting in the time and the money to do research behind podcasting. I know Baraza Media Lab and Africa Podcast Festival have put out research based on the podcasting industry. So now that kind of discipline and that kind of rigor is coming up. In our region, which is very exciting. It's very exciting, and the as is with any new media or platform, we have to kind of build that kind of discipline. It's not going to come immediately. It might not even take the next. It might not be even the next 3 years, but we'll build it slowly, and it'll become the norm, as is with everything.
Thank you, Doris. So I want to be mindful. A lot of these conversations have gone on for an hour and longer, and I know people jump in and out of Twitter spaces. I want to be very, very aware that people may have questions. So if there's anything you'd like to ask, feel free to tweet it. Otherwise, I wanted to ask, was there anything specifically, because I want to close this up in about 15. Adell, was there anything specifically that you felt that really helped you understand the business behind podcasting or the business of creators making money, or leveraged your talents as you've kind of grown into this space as an executive, that you think that you would want to share to anyone who might be listening who's looking to get into the business?
Yeah, so my background is in audio production, and I feel like that helped me significantly in a lot of ways, not just from knowing how to create content, but also once I was placed in a leadership position, but being able to kind of mentor and pour into our team and kind of help them and other podcasters find ways to be creative and find their voices. Because like we've said again and again, like everyone might not be, built for being a host or creative in that way. We find other ways from like soundscaping and writers and researchers and, just kind of really pouring into a lot of people. Honestly, I feel like I said before, I feel like the biggest thing that's helped me in general is sessions like this, meeting new people. Podcasting is always changing. I was just telling someone this the other day. One of my biggest responsibilities is doing promo swaps. So not even necessarily from a financial standpoint, just but from growth. Meeting other podcasters, seeing how they can relate or swap with one of our shows, or even if I know another show that they would be a good fit for, connecting podcasters, especially of color, to other shows to drop in a promo in their feed and swap and build those relationships. And even in that space of me doing that just for maybe like a year now, it went from just audio read, host read to host read. Then, audio drop to audio drop. Now people are introducing newsletter swaps, and that's all in the span of a year. So I think it's just, I always say, give yourself grace, be kind to yourself. That's something that I carry with myself every day as I'm trying to learn. Even now in the position that I am, I still feel like there's a lot to learn. I've enjoyed this panel, even listening to Doris. I feel like I've learned some stuff. And just having these overall conversations with each other, I feel like it's important that we continue to build community, and talk to each other and grow. I'm an open book. I would say feel free to follow me, shoot me a message, email me. I want to help folk as much as I can, and I also want to learn from others. So I feel like as I said before, communication has helped me in any position that I'm in, but especially in this one where there's such a level of transparency and a lot of folk, and we just all kind of want to grow, and just having these, larger conversations and networking. I feel like that has helped me a lot, even as a leader in the position that I'm in now.
Okay, thank you for that, Adell. I think that's incredibly helpful, and you've been really sharing these gems with us during this conversation, so we are very thankful. Doris, is there anything that you would tell us that has helped you in this journey as an executive in the business of podcasting? And also, would there be anything that you would share with the creators as they develop their own business around their podcast?
Okay, so podcasting in Africa, certainly in Kenya, is still very new, right? Even where I am at, I have been in podcasting actively for maybe like 2 years, right? We don't know. Anybody who says they're an expert in podcasting, at least in this region, I think they're a liar, because things are constantly changing. We're still learning. And we have to be able to develop that kind of agility to move with the times. So my thing, anytime I come into SemaBOX, I know that I don't know some things. And also, we don't know what we don't know. New things will always come up that will shock you, that will change your perspective when it comes to podcasting, when it comes to creators in the podcasting field, when it comes to dealing with corporates. So you have to be basically able to learn and learn quickly. For my creators, the thing that I say is the principle of Kaizen, 1% improvement all the time. Don't get so focused on the harm that was on your microphone that one time. Yes, it's annoying. Yes, we know that is a faux pas, but the next episode, can we do better? Can we improve on the next episode? Can we create better scripts for the next episode? Can we find better audio for or music for our next episode? So I don't want my creators to be so focused on the small things that they miss the bigger picture, that is creating conversations that resonate with your audience.
Thank you. Thank you. And for anyone who's in this, if you want to ask a question, I'm about to open it up. Like I said, I'd like to wrap this up in about 10 minutes. So does anyone have any questions, or would you like me to continue asking questions to our panelists? I'm going to double check. All right. No questions. Great. I have more. I'm always prepared. I think that, before we get into, I guess, our final question or our final bit here, I really want to take a minute to acknowledge the impact of storytelling in Black spaces, whether it's on the continent or whether it's in the diaspora. And I think that we are all of us sitting in this conversation, this Twitter space, are sitting in an opportunity to leverage the talents and the untold and underrepresented voices that are out there. So when we have the opportunity to lift each other up in these conversations, like Adell is saying, participate, communicate, ask questions. When we have people like Doris, who's, I personally severely think that you are underselling yourself here. SemaBOX is the largest producer of podcasts in Kenya. They have over 90 podcasts and started the first incubator for women in
Yes.
Africa or globally. One of the two. Is it globally or is it in Africa? But we're
Yes.
not experts. We're not experts. We are all learning. And I think that what's important to take away from conversations like this is, one, everyone is accessible. If you have a question about the business of podcasting, you can reach out to any of us. And if it's not us that you want to speak to, you can find who you want to speak to on LinkedIn and reach out to them as well. Everyone is looking to help. And I think especially in these underrepresented spaces, it's about making the pie bigger. And that's something I often say to my team, something I say to investors, something I say to partners. It's not about taking a piece of the pie right now. It's about making the pie bigger, because we still need to validate this space. Spotify even says that they have not, their bet on podcasting hasn't paid off yet. We are still growing as an industry. We are still learning how to make this work. We're still trying to figure out discoverability and searchability as a whole industry. So I think that as we're learning what works in our specific businesses, whether it's production, whether we're in operations, whether we're in strategy, whether we're in content, I think that knowledge transfer becomes incredibly important. And we have an amazing opportunity to bridge the gap here. So I hope that as you see the same like-minded people who are in this conversation, you look to connect with them. you look to find them on LinkedIn or connect via message, or maybe you're looking to get access into Africa, right? Like Doris would be a great person to talk to about that. Gathoni, who's here, or myself. And on that, because I don't want to ramble at everyone, Adell, Doris, do you guys have anything you'd like to wrap up on? Or are there any questions that have come into the chat? No questions, guys. You guys are a quiet bunch. Doris and Adell, I'm going to let you guys wrap it up, and then we will end this 15 minutes early. So Adell, you first.
Yeah. I was just going to say, overall, it's just so true what you were saying. I always say every contact is a connection. So just think of it that way. Like everyone you come into contact with, you can, be connected with them, or they can help connect you to, someone else. And I feel like that's really important for this space. It's just always changing. It's so just evolving. It's just so much. And I also want to say, like, you know, don't be discouraged as you're rolling things out. Tap into your village, tap into your community, tap into, other folk around in general, and just kind of find different ways to kind of help you be encouraged and grow. Because it's kind of easily to face a space with burnout when you start looking at numbers, when you start kind of breaking things down, and you don't want to do that. You have to truly believe in your voice and what you're creating, and listen to yourself, listen to your content. How can you be better? Listen to what you're putting out. Listen to other podcasts. Listen to podcasts that are similar to yours. Listen to those that are different. Listen to the different types. There are narrative, interview style. It's just so much things in that space, and I feel like it's a constant, you're constantly learning because it's constantly changing. And so just for sure be encouraged. I'm just so happy to be here. And just grateful that you have me on stage with you all. And just thank you. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. I've been really encouraged overall with everything that I've been hearing. And, we're always just DCP as a whole. We're always just here to kind of help support and uplift folks. So again, do not be afraid about reaching out to me directly.
Thank you, Adell. And Doris, would you like to go first? Or we actually have a question in here. Would you like to go first, or would you like the question?
Question would be great.
Okay. Question. Go ahead.
Hi guys, this is Gathoni. Hi Doris, hi Adele. So I had a question because I realized that all three of you are women, and how important do you think it is to have women, or do you feel some sort of responsibility as the women in this space and having to be the pioneers, especially like now in Africa in our storytelling? Do you feel a responsibility? Molly, I'd like you to answer this question as well.
Women seem to be carrying the torch in Africa in terms of the business. I think there are a lot of men that are hosts that do an incredible job that I've seen in Africa, but it's really incredible to see that Africa Podfest is run by women. The first podcast magazine is run by a woman out of South Africa. Doris is an executive. I'm an executive for a technical platform, one of the largest podcasts out of West Africa. I said what I said. Shout out to the Nigerians. They are incredible dynamic women, FK and Jaws. So, I mean, there are women everywhere, and it's an exciting place, especially on this continent, that women have the ability to use their voice. But I also think that the men are doing incredible things, and I want to be, fair to that. Anyone else want to add to that? Adell, Doris?
Yeah, I think I can jump in. I do feel a responsibility to represent the voices of women. One of our justifications for the Dada Podcast Incubator, when we're doing the research, the biggest podcasts in the world, one, are run by men, white men, and two, they're run by people from the global north. So even the women who are in the podcasting, only 3% of the top podcasts in the world are run by women, and they're run by white women. So we felt it necessary to platform the voices of historically silenced individuals. And for our case, I did not want anybody to come and tell our stories for us. We have agency, and we should be able to tell our stories the way we feel most comfortable. So I do feel a very big responsibility, and I'm glad it's paying off. Those conversations are making a difference. We could see some of the people who we were working with in our incubation. Their stories were featured on the BBC. They have actually gotten employment out of the stories that they have created. They're now running campaigns of their own. So we do feel a responsibility, and we can actually see the investment that we are putting in women paying off.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. And we have one more question. I want to give the Black Podcasters Association a little bit of space. So, what's on your mind? You have the floor. You have to unmute yourself, though.
Hey, thank you for letting me ask my question. It's a real quick question. It's something that my name's Corey, by the way. I'm the founder of the Black Podcast Association. I just had a quick question on what can we do to foster or to create better connections between the black podcasting space here in America and our brothers and sisters in the African continent. What can we do to create better relationships? How can we create platforms that allow us to work together in this podcast space to address some of those issues that were just presented about, the big podcasts in regards to being white male dominated or white woman dominated?
Doris, we have to give this to you because you are the African born and bred on the continent. So I will not answer that, even though I'm here. Doris?
What I can say is let's I think the thing that Adele had mentioned is let's be great communicators. Let's communicate with one another. Let's listen to one another instead of speaking or talking at each other. As Africans, we're not going to tell African Americans that you don't know how it is to be African. And I feel the reverse should be the same, that you don't know how it is to be Black in America. And those are the kind of conversations that are happening. Let's listen to one another. Let's create situations where we can, foster healthy conversations between one another. I think for me that has worked really fantastically on a personal level. I speak with Kevin from Afripods all the time. His points of view are vastly different from mine. I'm like, actually, this person has had a life that has been totally different, and his experiences are valid. So it just needs for us to, humble ourselves and listen to one another and share our content, not from a point of this person is wrong or this person is fantastically right, but this is a different perspective this is a different side of the coin. I hope I didn't ramble there.
No. And thank you, Adele and Doris. Thank you very much. I am going to shoot my shot at you, Adele, while I have you here in front of all of these people. I would like to figure out a way that Afripods and DCP figure out some sort of partnership. So I will reach out to you afterwards. I think this is a very actionable step as to step one of bridging the gap, as Corey just mentioned, how we do it. Shooters shoot. I say that all the time to my team, but you don't get your shots if you don't take them. So let's be in touch after this and figure something out. And for anyone who's listening in here and you're interested in working with someone, reach out to them. Definitely reach out to Doris. She's got some stuff going on, and she has a lot of creative solutions and an incredible team. But Adele, if there's anything creative that you think that you can do with Afripods or that Afripods can do for you, or something exciting together, let's figure that out.
I am all in for that.
Hey, look how easy that was. Corey, that's all you got to do. Anyways, everyone, I hope you've had an incredible International Podcast Day. Adele and Doris, you guys are incredibly dynamic women, and it's been my privilege to be able to speak to you both for 45 minutes. And everyone here, thank you for giving us a little bit of your time, and thank you for caring about this topic. We can't do this without you. We can't do this without the creators, and we hope that you've taken some value from this. So on final last words, Adele, Doris, feel free to say how they can contact you and thank yous, and we will end this space. Adele?
Yeah, so you can shoot me an email. My email is I can't even talk now. My email is Coleman, so Coleman at dcpentertainment.com. You can shoot me a DM on here, and if you look in the audience, you see DCP is there as well. You can also DM there. And they'll let me know. They'll reach out to me. And just thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome. I definitely look forward to the next thing. And nice meeting you, Doris. I definitely would love to connect with you as well.
Uh, yeah. Thank you so much, Molly, for having me on here. It's always fantastic working with Afripods. You guys are our people. For anybody who's looking to reach out to me, definitely follow me here on Twitter or Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or you will find me as Doris Onyango everywhere. You can DM me here as well. You can follow our organization, that is SemaBOX. They are also listening here. You can send me an email. My email is doris@semabox.net. That is DORIS@SemaBOX.net. So I look forward to connecting with everybody here.
All right. Everyone, have an incredible afternoon in the States and an amazing evening in Africa. Happy International Podcast Day. We are out. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.